What is up? Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Dynasty One YouTube channel, doing a rare live stream, but here we are. So like our comment says, bring on those questions. Want to say good morning to everybody who's watching and going to introduce the guys I got with me today. We got Bob Van Duzer. Bob, what is up?
Not much. Ready to dive into some questions. Get these folks ready for the season that is well on its way and coming in soon.
We're going to have to wait till Nate rejoins us. I think he is frozen.
Oh, good. Always good to start off with some good old internet issues. Mike, how are you today? Are you ready to get into this?
I'm good. I'm ready. You know, born ready. Love doing some live streams. I know you do too, Bob. You're a big fan.
I go back and forth on the live streams, but hey, we're here to help people, man of the people, for the people, of the people. And Nate,
he's back.
is back.
Hi, Nate.
Didn't take.
I'm back. I'm back for now. Hopefully, a while.
I think our last live stream was after the draft, was it not?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So we were long overdue. Bob, are you going to be throwing the questions up?
Yep, I can do that. Very much so. So we do have a question already. Do you guys want to hop into that, or do you guys want to talk about some of our own stuff, or let's hop into it then? So running backs and rebuilds at this point, I have rebuilt going across 2 leagues. Should we always just sell whatever running back value we have with the current landscape? Thanks, guys. It's a good question. Off the rip, who wants to lead? Nate, do you want to take a crack at this one? I know you love running backs.
You know how much I love running backs. In majority of cases, I think if you're in the beginning of a rebuild, yes, you move on from running backs. If you're at the very, if it's a 2-year rebuild and you're entering the first year, even a guy like Bijan, a guy like Gibbs, they're valued so highly right now. Not saying that their value won't stay, but their value is just so high right now. You can go ahead and get 24 first-round picks. You can go ahead and get players in addition to that, and you can sell those guys. Now, if you're at the coming into the final year of your rebuild and you have some of those younger players, even guys like Zach Charbonnet, Devon A-Chain, you might want to keep those guys because, those running backs do have a 2 to 3 year shelf window. And if we're in the last year of our rebuild, those guys help us when we come out of a rebuild. We do want to win when we come out of our rebuild. There's a reason we're rebuilding. So we do want to hold on to the running backs if they're fitting our timeline. It's less so, are we in a rebuild or are we not? It's more so, what is our timeline and do these players individually fit that?
Yeah. Well said.
I agree with that. But let's also remember, just because you're rebuilding, don't sell these guys too low. You want to make sure you're getting the proper value
for sure
for these guys.
Yeah, 100%. Always. We do have another one. My friend had a guy blow up his team, then dip. I took over. I was able to flip Mixon and Brandon Cooks for a 25, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The only other asset is Russell Wilson. What should I try to do with him in Superflex? Mike, you love quarterbacks. You're more high on Russell Wilson than I am.
Yeah.
Why don't you take this one?
Well, if the team was already blown up, I don't think Russell Wilson is going to help you at all. So I would try. The problem is Russell Wilson kind of is a tier down quarterback, if you will.
Right.
So I don't know how much farther you could tier down and still get a starting caliber quarterback unless you go. I mean, who do you trust more long term, Russell Wilson or Desmond Ridder? Because I feel like that might be the only logical tier down. I don't want to tier down to Desmond Ridder, right?
Yeah. No. I think, just to chime in 2 cents, just with, moving Russell Wilson, definitely get him off your team. Find one way to do it, but try to get some draft capital sooner. This team, if it's blown up, it needs sooner draft capital, unless maybe we're just locked and loaded, and that's why we shot for 2025 picks. But get some draft capital sooner. Try to maybe let the season start, let him show out a little bit, and try to sell him for a 24 first. If you can get that, I'm pretty happy with it. You're probably getting a later first at that point, but that's what I'd be shooting for to try to get him. Because if this team is really blown up and we're in a rebuild, he's not going to last what's left of this rebuild, in my opinion.
Probably not.
For sure.
We got Sean chiming in with the rewind.
Curtis is saying Ridder has been what I've been looking at, or Howell. I think I might like Sam Howell a little bit more.
Yeah, 100% Howell.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you tear down to that, I mean, Sam Howell looked really good in the preseason. You know who didn't look good in the preseason? Trey Lance. You guys want to talk about that a little bit? Like,
we can do that.
How much is there to talk about? I mean, he's going to the Cowboys now.
Yep.
But And I've heard there's a whole thing with Dak's contract, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that they're trying to extend him though, also. So I wouldn't call this a, it is a strike of positivity for Trey Lance because any situation is better than the one he was in. Arguably, I'd say it's easier to probably jump Purdy and Sam Darnold than it is to drop or jump Dak. But getting him just in a new situation, fresh eyes, all that, I think is just a huge benefit to him, and just shine some light on another very unpositive situation for when it comes to the Trey Lance situation and issues he's had. But that was actually going to be a topic on our upcoming podcast, what to do with Trey Lance, and he gets traded. So this was even before that happened.
Well, it's interesting, not to interrupt you, Bob, but technically Dak only has one more year on his contract. 25 and 26 are voided.
Yeah, but
so
this is a chance. It's nothing. I wouldn't read too far into this. I don't think this is a Cowboys are trying to solve their long-term quarterback issues by sending a 4th-round pick to get Trey Lance. This is exactly what was, I think, said in our Discord, was just that this is a developmental shot in the dark. This is a known expectation now in Trey Lance, that it's not, hey, we're not spending, a 1st-round pick on you like the 49ers did with Trey Lance. This is them taking a shot. It's definitely more positive for Trey Lance. Like I said, I think if I had Trey Lance, I'd be, this is a great opportunity to get out for something. If I can move on for a 2nd-round pick at this point, more than happy doing so at this rate. But so let's see. We got another one from Curtis, but I want to get to Ginskins here with his first question. What do you guys think about giving up a 1st and 2nd-year youth to try to get better talent players you want on a rebuild that's 2 years away? That's an interestingly phrased question. So,
because I want that 1st and 2nd-year youth on a rebuild personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can get guys that are still, 24, 25 that are going to outlast the rebuild that seem like higher quality, I'm fine with that. But I don't want to just, give up a guy that's, something.
One thing too, I understand wanting to get better talent, but don't always just go for players you want, because I've gotten burned in the past. Like, I like this guy better than this guy, but go for obviously the better talent. Oh, that's the proper way to look at it, in my opinion. But yeah, we lost Nate. Hey, can we look at Brian? He brought a trade up.
1 second.
Yeah, that's
this one.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I traded Trey Lance for Howell and a late 24 3rd and 2nd. Love it. This is, obviously we're looking in hindsight now, but this is, even in a vacuum, I think right now, even 2 weeks ago, this was great value. I mean,
I completely agree with that. Fantastic. Well done, Brian.
Yeah, I think his value was right around a 2nd-round pick to begin with. And then you get a quarterback on top and a 3rd, when nothing good has been said about Trey Lance since his injury last year.
Yeah.
And that is what I've been pounding the table for all, this whole run, is when you don't hear anything good about a guy. He's the 1st guy, he's the 2nd guy, now he's the 3rd guy, gets traded. This is just a great move, capitalizing on some not great due diligence, let's say. So we got Nate back.
Nice trade. And even 2 weeks ago, I would have been way on board with this. You're trading an assumed backup for a starting quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. And I think the leash on Sam Howell is longer than people think it's going to be. Jacoby Brissett is there, right? And yeah, Jacoby Brissett is fine. But for everything I can see, the Commanders really like Sam Howell. So like I said, I think the leash is pretty long. He looked good in preseason. He looked good in his 1 start last year. So I'm all in on Sam Howell, not as my QB1, but as my QB2 in certain circumstances, like QB2 in a rebuild or QB3 on a good team. I'm all about that. I think he's a guy that's going to get you through some injury weeks, some bye weeks, just fine.
Yeah. Got the wives chiming in. Got both of our wives, Mike, chiming in.
Hey, Jenna, if you're still watching, if you love me, I could use a refill on coffee.
I got mine before I jumped on, just saying.
I only had half cup. I thought I had more. Uncle Bill's Pancake House mug needs to be refilled, sweetie.
Jesus. I had to fill up the Yeti for that one.
Smart man.
Caleb, one of our patrons, chiming in with his thoughts on the Lance trade. Surprised that the team with less quarterback depth didn't want to play the game with Atlanta and Washington. Lions, Bills, Ravens were interested, but only for a 5th or 6th. I think that, there's an interesting concept to be had here, and maybe the reason why a team that has a legitimate starter ahead of him wanted in, because there'd be no expectations on the guy. Nobody's expecting him to jump Dak. Nobody's going to be putting that pressure on him. They're bringing him into a very friendly situation, as opposed to one where if he went to Atlanta, Washington, or any of these other places that have big question marks, immediate, well, this guy was a first-round pick. He's super athletic, has a laser for an arm. All of these things would have been taken into consideration. I think this is a great thing for Trey Lance. Probably one of the better case scenarios, because if he gets thrown to the fire again this year, he's done. Now we can take the Geno Smith route, do his thing. Maybe something comes of it. I'm not banking on him. If I have him, I'm still looking to move him for a second if I can. Now is a great time to do that, because people are going to look at Dak's contract, overthink it, and put him in a role he doesn't belong in. So
that's one other thing on that too. When you look at teams like Washington and Atlanta, you're going for a question mark, guys that the teams believe in. But now these younger, unproven starters don't have to be looking over their shoulder at a guy like Trey Lance. They could go out there, do their thing, because we know Jacoby Brissett is a fine NFL quarterback. We know Taylor Heineke has won some games in the NFL, but these are not guys that are going to be, oh, hey, you got the message. Thanks, honey. I love you. These are guys that are not going to be the future of the franchise. Whereas we don't know about Desmond Ridder or Sam Howell yet. I'm a little higher on Sam Howell than Desmond Ridder at this point. But all parties, Sam Howell's a winner in this. Desmond Ridder is a winner in this. Trey Lance is the biggest winner in this. And you know what? If this causes turmoil for the Dallas Cowboys, that makes me a winner in all of this too.
Yeah. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys, let's talk about how much do we think Deuce steals from Pollard in the passing game? And honestly, I don't know how much. I mean, Pollard's calling card is almost receiving game. So, and honestly, I wouldn't be too upset if he does take some work, because we're so concerned about Pollard holding on to or managing this workload. I think Deuce working in some into the passing game, Pollard gets more in the running game. Maybe not a bad thing. And we all love Deuce, just hated his size. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think he steals 15-20% of work tops. Like that's
so we're just gonna act like Rico Dowdle. Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're gonna do, Mike. That's exactly
like 5 to 10 passing down snaps probably is what Deuce takes.
Nothing crazy.
And I'll take that to keep Pollard fresh, because I think Pollard is extremely efficient, but he's never had over 200 carries in a season. He's never had a huge workload. And oftentimes when volume goes up, efficiency goes down. So we'll see if Pollard can keep that efficiency. Guys like Deuce taking those snaps, that helps him out, I think that just makes him more efficient, keeps that efficiency up.
Yep, love it.
Brandon, you can ask redraft questions too. That's fine. Dump them in here.
Yeah, true. So we got Musgrave or Laporta. Who will be the one to pick? This is interesting. I'm going to divert to you guys, because I obviously have a bias here. I like both players a good bit, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. I think I know where we're heading on this for the most part, but I'll play devil's advocate later. You guys chime in your 2 cents.
Should we start with the tight end whisper, Nate?
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure.
I mean, I think Laporta is the guy, and I think he's going to be the better overall player just because of the opportunities he's going to get in the Detroit Lions offense. That being said, I love both players. And a lot of people saw Tucker Kraft coming in as a bad thing to Luke Musgrave. But when you're not as good of a player as Luke Musgrave is, because Tucker Kraft is a Jack Stoll on steroids, essentially. He's a good blocker. That's it. He's not very athletic. He's not a good receiver. I said what I said. I watched the film. He's Josiah Degora.
That was my literal comp for him too.
And it's a great comp, Bob. It's fantastic.
Just had to happen that way, but continue.
If I had to pick one, it's going to be Laporta, but I do like both players, honestly. And I think Musgrave's going to be fine in Green Bay's offense.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Nate.
I like both players as well. I think Luke Musgrave is going to get plenty of opportunity. I just think the Packers offense, there's no one has really become like that next tier.
There's no hierarchy.
So there's just a bunch of players all like in a mid-tier. I don't think anyone's going to really siphon a ton of volume. And that's where I think Laporta is going to, do better this year, because he's kind of in that hierarchy. He's like, like the second or third target, depending on who's on the field. And I like Musgrave a lot, but I also believe in Jared Goff at this point more than Love. So I'll take Laporta for now, but I'm really high on Musgrave as well. I think we need to definitely keep an eye on him because I think he's going to be a good tight end.
Yeah, I think if you're gun to your head, you have to pick one or the other. I'm going Laporta, 100%. But like if you have, let's say, 2 second-round picks, and you could pick Laporta at the 203, or you can pick, I don't know, some other great wide receiver there that we love. Like now Marvin Mims is a great spot there. And then say you have a later second, I'm looking at Musgrave if I want to fill a tight end with a rookie then. But if you got to pick between the two, I'd say that. And another thing to just bring up is you're talking about this Packers offense having weapons now. What do we always talk about when a team has good weapons across the board, and albeit young and somewhat unproven? You want the quarterback throwing the ball. And I think this is a case for, having Musgrave, having Reed, who's getting a lot of hype, has shown well, having Christian Watson, explosive playmaker. Those running backs are going to get usage. Love is going to have no shortage of weapons. They made sure of that in the draft, as it was repetitively stated. But I like Laporta overall, but definitely think there's a case to be made for Musgrave. Just traded 3 late 2024 seconds for Dotson and a mid 24 third.
I'm good with that.
Can you do better?
Love
Can you
that.
do better? No.
That's called theft, Brandon.
Sean chiming in. His son Cole wants to know which wide receiver is going to be the best this year, Jefferson or Chase.
This is so easy. You just tell Cole, patreon.com/Rewind. We'll answer all your questions in the Discord. Eileen just
fired shots this morning. Yeah, I agree. I think Jefferson's just the safer bet. Chase obviously has a huge ceiling, but you're arguably splitting hairs at this point.
I'll take Chase here since you guys both went Jefferson.
Brian is doubling down, another patron and also a content creator. Brian Ford is doubling down on Trey Lance. Has not yet learned his lesson, but that's okay. So just had a 10-team startup draft, managed to get 5 first-round picks for 2024 using that inchworm strategy.
There we go.
Way to bring that up. Now people are having seller's remorse. They should all be the top 8, but goes against my plan. At what point do you punt the punt? I think honestly, if you have that many first round picks, we talked about it a lot leading into the draft cycle this year with the rookie drafts, dynasty rookie drafts, is I'd hold those 5 first. I'd hold on unless you're getting supreme value moving them now. I'd hold on to them and then either draft elite players coming out next year. We got Caleb Williams, we got Marvin Harrison. Nate and I have done several mock drafts.
Yep.
Obviously, wait till then and sell these picks that you don't want for proven talent. And then you get to expedite your rebuild. You don't have to wait for guys to develop. That's what I do with this. I'd hold on to the punt. You did a great job capturing 5 first-round picks. Let your team suck this year. Keep your first pick at the top. Draft Caleb Williams, draft Marvin Harrison Jr., wherever it falls. I just think you did a great job with this point. So what do you guys think here? Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think, draft picks continue to gain value.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason to trade them now unless you're getting supreme value, like I said, Bob, because they're just going to get better and better. And next year, they're going to be peak value, right before the rookie draft. That's when you want to sell those or use them to get great players because we like next year's class. It's a pretty exciting class.
Yeah.
Mike?
No, I love everything about this. And you know what? They're having seller's remorse. Sucks to suck. Deal with it.
I love
Sorry, that's just how it is, man.
It's true.
Shout out to Jenna for bringing Mike more coffee.
For the record, I did not mean to talk in the third person. I thought I was commenting as Dynasty Rewind. So thanks for that.
There you go. But so then in a 12-team startup draft, just got Kyler Murray at the 502. Is that a felony? I would say yes.
Well, apparently not, because in the other comments he fell to the 10th.
Yeah.
And the 11th,
so apparently you're reaching.
Ooh.
Are we sure this is is this like a 1 quarterback versus a super flex? This is super flex, we know. So that'd be my only question between the two. But 502 in a super flex either way is a steal for me. Guy regularly going in like the 2nd round, maybe the top of the 3rd. So I think it's a good hey, here we go. 10th of a super flex 10-team startup. So that's a confirm. So sounds definitely. Like so yeah, you reached. You
did. You know what? At the same point in time, yeah, okay. If Kyler Murray doesn't work out this year, Kyler Murray is a starting quarterback in the NFL somewhere next year, even if the Cardinals draft. I mean, he's far better than anything Tampa Bay has to offer right now. That would just be, if he got there, we don't know what's going to happen with Desmond Ridder at Atlanta. So there's two options right there. Maybe Matthew Stafford retires and he stays in the division to get some sort of revenge, I don't know. There's going to be options for a player like Kyler Murray. There's coaches that will be willing to work with him. So is it a reach? Slightly. But the fact of the matter is you have a starting quarterback at some point.
Yep.
You won't hate it.
Yeah. I skipped this one earlier from Curtis. My bad. Buy, sell, keep Rondale Moore. Highly likelihood he may be with Caleb Williams next year. I see such upside with him from the slot. I just don't think you're selling him for enough if you have him. Yeah. I think if you can buy him for a 3rd round pick, fine. Otherwise, just hold him. I don't see a lot of, great movement with him. If you can get him like added on to a deal you have working, you see him on a roster, get him as a throw-in, I'm fine with that. I don't see any huge incentive. I think he's a solid value in that offense right now, but I think it's going to be the Marquise Brown show and Michael Wilson popping off.
Yeah, how
I think
about
he's
it?
going
I
to be
was wrong about
year.
him so far.
Well, I haven't been, so
yeah.
that's
okay. I think Rondale Moore right now is a good value, but I think once we get into the season, because I do expect him to have some production this year, but once we get into the season, he's a guy I'd be looking to sell. If Caleb Williams comes in next year, I think they're drafting a wide receiver too, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr. like we like, or
no, Nate.
Oh no,
that
Baltimore Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi is not on in Nottingham, so that is okay.
Really not.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I think they do bring in a wide receiver, but they might not have to if they have Michael Wilson and Marquise Brown kicking around still. They might not have to. So I think, I'd hold for now. In the season, if he starts popping off, I think there's a fair bet to be made about having. Let me just do this real quick. Sorry. Fair bet to be had that he's going to be just fine or be worth more later. And that's sometimes what's worth.
But there's also the case to be made too, Bob. If he's popping off and your team's doing really good, it might benefit you, riding it out, unless you could use him to upgrade for someone that is better. So
yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. All right, let me catch back up to where we were at with comments. Before I got distracted, Brian chiming in again. Divisive players I can make a 2023 and Dynasty case for either way. Geno, Dobbins, Swift, Sanders, Pittman, Hollywood, JMO, Burks, all of the Moores, Kittle, Waller, Ingram. Thoughts on any of these guys in any capacity? Nate is back. Nice. Good work. We're back.
Try to be.
It's all good. So do you want to chime in on any of these players, Nate? We finished up the Moore discussion, so we could skip him. We touched on him quite a bit.
You guys talked about all the Moores?
Not all the Moores, just Rondale Moore.
Oh,
so if you have any of these guys you want to chime in on, any you got strong feelings on, maybe a J.K. Dobbins, Mike, maybe a DeAndre Swift.
I really like Miles Sanders. I think Mike's on the same page as me there. Yeah, I think Bobby's good value as well. He's just a great value right now. We were talking the other day on the podcast about Tony Pollard, who's, constantly going as like a top 8 running back in Dynasty. The production certainly looks like it's there this year, but he's coming off an injury. He's currently on the franchise tag. He does not have a long-term deal. We have not seen him, take on a huge workload. He's 26 years old. He's not a young running back, and he's being ranked so highly. Meanwhile, we got Miles Sanders, who is on a 3-year deal, albeit it's really only 2, and the last one's probably going to be voided. But same age, 26 years old, has been productive, has handled, similar workload, has been a running back 1, and he's in the Panthers, and they're talking about giving him a 3-down workload, getting him 50-plus receptions. I don't understand why Sanders is going about RB24 in Dynasty startups versus Tony Pollard up RB6 or so. That discrepancy just kind of blows me away because they're kind of similar players if you just look at the stats, look at the expected production. Pollard's got that extra gear to make those big plays, which is exciting. But at the end of the day, they're very similar.
Yeah, especially when you have to talk about costs to acquire. Pollard costs you an arm and a leg almost to go get, whereas Sanders is just significantly cheaper. Real quick, before we continue on with this, I want to get to a super chat that just came in. Appreciate you, Blind, supporting this team, the channel, the brand itself. So I have a 10-team super flex start 9. Half point 10 in premium Dynasty startup on Sunday. Any tips how to approach the draft? What is your general strategy? Grab 2 elite quarterbacks, play the board. What are you guys thinking with a draft like this? 10-teamer, super flex, start 9. What do you got? Who wants to kick it off? Mike, Nate?
Mike?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I love to come in and make myself a nice little list of players I want. Look at some ADP, look at how these guys finished last year, then kind of project a little bit. Obviously, that depends on your draft spot, but be flexible. I've seen so many times where people go in and they're so rigid in their drafting strategy, and it just backfires on them. Be flexible, play the board, of course, best player available. And the good thing is with a 10-team league, getting 2 elite quarterbacks, if that's the way that you want to approach it, which is a very good strategy in Superflex, it's a little bit easier than in a 12-team league too. I think you could get some really good quarterbacks in the second round too. Like in Brian's question, Geno Smith is a guy that I'm targeting later.
Yeah.
Guys like him, Jared Goff, Geno Smith threw for over 4,000 yards last year. I didn't think it was that much. I thought it was like just under 4,000. So I would, and if you can't get the 2 elite quarterbacks, if you go 1 elite QB, an elite wide receiver, and then you get a guy like Geno Smith, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins always falls late for some reason. Get guys like that as your QB2, you're going to be doing just fine.
Yep. I like that strategy. I think that's a good strategy in a 10-team Superflex start 9, because we're only talking about 90 players starting lineup across the board. Yep. That's not a lot of players, so you need studs. So I think something in this strategy is to definitely make sure you're drafting studs, not players that have a lot of question marks. You want to get players that are going to perform with your first 5-6 rounds of picks, because every single player is that much more valuable in a start 9. You don't have as much room to work with when you're playing other teams. You need to have 9 really strong players. I'd also look at investing to move up. In like the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, move up from there, maybe 2 or 3 rounds if we can. Because at that point, people stop asking for so much to move around like they do in the first 3 or 4 rounds. But at this point, we're still getting starters for our lineup. And with those starters being so important, I like moving up, from that 8th, 9th pick to maybe an extra 6th round pick. If we're giving up a, second round pick next year, maybe we're moving down a little bit like in the 12th round or something like that, 10th round, I'm fine making that move to make sure that we have a stronger starting lineup.
Yeah, Nate, I love that you brought that up, because one thing I like to do in most drafts, in a start 9, not as much, but I like to trade down early and trade up late, because it is, like you said, so much more valuable to trade up. And then what you start doing is the ultimate goal I want for this. I want to have as many picks in the top 9 rounds as I can. As many picks as I can. So start trading up from the 10th, get to the 7th, however you got to do it. Even if you have to trade up, starting, like you said, the 9th to the 6th, 10th to the 7th, whatever you got to do. And then create these gaps down the board, and then just start trading up every single round so that your late rounds, your 25 through 30th rounds just disappear basically. So just if you make a gap, don't not make a pick for a round or 2. Trade back up into that spot, keep getting more quality players. And the last thing I mentioned, being a 0.5 tight end premium, definitely want to focus on tight end too, but I really want 2 elite quarterbacks, 2 high-end quarterbacks. I want one of the top 8, and I want like Tua, who is, albeit a question mark, but a guy who's, if he's healthy, he's a top 10 quarterback, more than likely. So, that's a guy that, I was going to say, if you want to take less of a risk, go for Deshaun Watson, but arguably as much of a risk. But I definitely want that, because like you said, Nate, these lineups are fairly compact. It's not a start 7, it's not a start 8, it's a start 9. So it's kind of close to that cusp where you do need a little bit more depth. But in a start 10, you got to get quarterbacks. You have to get 2 of the top 15 quarterbacks at worst, and have one be a top 8. In my opinion. So definitely want to focus on that if at all possible, and take it from there. But this is definitely a good one. Just a little self promo. We do have a startup draft guide available, a startup strategy guide for drafts. That is in the link in the description box below. You can check that out there, and go pick that up if you need a little more help strategy wise, some in-depth strategy behind that. So I need to find out where we left off. Oh, easy enough. So we have Brian's discussion. Is there anybody else we feel really strong about here? I've been very vocal about Jameson Williams. I've been very vocal about him. A guy I was trying to get out on if I had him anywhere a lot earlier. Then the suspension comes in. Now we have another 6 games he's going to miss. This guy is just missing developmental time against pro NFL talent. And, tell me, and I could be wrong, but tell me a good player that missed half of his rookie year, and then played through his rookie year, didn't really do a whole heck of a lot, then misses almost half of his next season due to a suspension after having zero good positive camp buzz. I mean, this guy is starting fights. He's dropping passes. He's struggling in camp. I just don't think this guy is what people want him to be. And if I had him, don't have him anywhere. So I'm not invested in him like I know some people are. If I had him, I'm waiting till that time he's back and he's getting more buzz, and I'm sending him out the door the second I can, because I don't want anything more to do with this, because I don't think he's the player you want him to be. I think he's a great deep threat, big play, boomer bust option. I think he's a wide receiver 3 for your team most weeks at best. Yeah. And I mean, if you're not getting that value return now, I guess hold, but I wish people would have gotten out on this sooner when the value made a lot more sense, where you could get a 24 first for the guy. But that's probably my biggest emotional feeling.
I was a huge fan of J-Mo coming out of college. If he hadn't been injured, he might have been my wide receiver 1 that year. Actually, I was so excited with him, and the talent on the field. We saw it; it was dominant, and we saw how good he was, because next year Alabama couldn't do anything through the passing game like they could when they had Jameson Williams. But you're right; you can't get on the field. Just the red flags are popping up all around. Yeah. And I've actually moved off J-Mo in a lot of my leagues. I traded him very early in the offseason for what ended up being the 107. Great move there. And also recently traded him for Pat Fryermuth straight up. So I'm trying to get off of him in most places. I am keeping 1 or 2 shares just to hold across my leagues. That way I have some exposure, because I still like the talent. But I've really gotten cold on J-Mo, and I'm doing the same thing, kind of moving off of him and letting someone else take that risk.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this, because I was asked this question yesterday from a friend of mine. He had Jameson Williams. He was offered Jahan Dotson straight up for him.
Done. I'm taking Jahan Dotson all day, every day.
Easily.
Oh my gosh.
Easy.
I mean,
I told him, I was like, the fact that you haven't already accepted that is the only disappointing thing here. You need to do it before the other person realizes what they're doing. Just take it and run.
It just blows me away. If you want to go actually buy low on the guy, be my guest. If you want to spend a 24-second to go buy Jameson Williams, be my guest. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to crap on, you wanting to go invest in a player you like. What I'm going to crap on is what you spend to go do that. And at that case, I can't get behind that. I can't, give that my blessing by any stretch of the imagination. Just like I can't give my blessing on moving CeeDee Lamb, or getting CeeDee Lamb and giving away a first-round pick in 2024 and Garrett Wilson. The gap between the two is far too small, I think. And I know we haven't seen Garrett Wilson do that yet, but CeeDee's been great, but he hasn't been that elite. It's not like you're moving from Garrett Wilson to Jamar
Chase or Jefferson. It makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It's too much. I think if you want to talk about a mid to late second, I think that's reasonable, but I'd probably rather just hold Wilson and see what happens, because I think he's going to get close enough. I haven't projected out to be a top 5 along with CeeDee next year. Don't have him quite there yet, but that's where I think the road is headed. So no chance I'm doing anything like this. I can't condone. Mike, any thoughts on this one?
I agree. I want to keep Garrett Wilson. Sorry.
Yeah.
I love CeeDee Lamb, but that, like you guys said, the gap is not big enough for me.
What backup quarterbacks are you looking to hold for the season, Mike? This screams you. This screams your I don't know, something, I guess.
I technically do not really hold a lot of backup quarterbacks, to be honest with you. I try to always have a starter, but if you want to hold some backup quarterbacks, I'd say your safest bets are guys like Will Levis. I know that right now he's the quarterback 3, but I think that's only a matter of time. They invested a second-round pick. They tried to trade back in the first, blah, 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 blah. Guys like Aiden O'Connell, I've been hearing a lot of good things about. If you want a really, really deep one, Tanner McKee is turning some heads in Philadelphia camp. And I don't think Marcus Mariota he's not going to be there after this year. If he makes it through the year, he quit on Atlanta last year. So aside from that, Stetson Bennett might be a really good stash too, with all the problems that Matthew Stafford's been having staying healthy lately. And Stetson Bennett's looked pretty decent in preseason. Heard some really good buzz about him from camp. And then, if you want to ever take a chance on a rookie quarterback and his backup, because you never know what the leash is going to be like for some of these guys.
Yeah, I like Jacoby Brissett. I think that'd be one of my top ones. I like Howell, but if this Washington team starts turning things around with the offense, defense has been okay over the last few years. If they turn things around and their quarterback is letting them down, Jacoby Brissett has shown that he can be a viable backup. And that's something I want if I'm stashing a backup quarterback, I want one who's come in and been a viable backup quarterback in the NFL.
Taylor Heineke would be an example of that.
I was just going to mention him as well. I like Taylor Heineke too. Guy with a shorter leash. Atlanta Falcons were a lot better than people pegged them for last year. There was a point where they were looking like they were going to be the 16th pick in the first round. Obviously that changed, but this, I don't want to be too crazy about holding, backup running backs unless you have really deep rosters. Have that. Sam Darnold is another one I like too. In case Purdy has any issues with his throwing arm coming back into things. Seems fine for now, but never know. And Sam Darnold has been somewhat competent in the NFL.
Yeah, one guy I think we all need to keep an eye on is Aiden O'Connell.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah, he's a great hold right now. He's probably one of the best holds for value right now because Jimmy G's never really stayed healthy. He's one season where he played the full season. One season. Mm-hmm. So if he goes out, I think we've seen enough in preseason. O'Connell's the next man up. He's throwing to Devontae Adams. That's enough for me. I'm taking O'Connell. He's looked good. Kind of looks like Derek Carr out there. So I'll take him.
Sure. Speaking of Sam Darnold, just recently, what are our predictions for Brock Purdy's career, Mr. Irrelevant, to starting quarterback on the San Francisco 49ers within a year?
What do you think is Tom Brady? I have a question.
Basically.
What is the worst part about being Mr. Irrelevant? The fact that you have to carry that term for the rest of your career, whatever your career may be, or the fact that you have to go to a parade at Disney? Because for me, I think it's the parade at Disney that they have for you.
I think it's both. Just be the last pick. It's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Brock Purdy is going to be an efficient quarterback, and you're going to hear Mr. Relevant a ton. You're going to hear the Tom Brady comps a ton because he was a late round draft pick and he ascended and blah, 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 blah. But I think he's going to be an efficient quarterback. I don't think he's going to ever wow you on the stat sheet or in your fantasy lineup, but he's going to do enough where he probably won't lose you any weeks in a fantasy football matchup. And for what you paid to get him in the rookie draft, you're going to be A-okay with that.
Yeah, 100%. And the only thing I'd add is just that, we're definitely going to hear now Brock Purdy comps. And we saw it even in the Senior Bowl this year with having Brock Purdy. But I think he's a decent enough quarterback too. I'd love to have him as my quarterback 3 in a super flex roster. I don't think he's ever going to reach that cusp of really being a quarterback 1 for you. I just don't think he has that much in him as a quarterback. I don't think he's a game-breaking quarterback. I think he's a step above a game manager, and people might get mad saying game manager. Game manager is not a bad thing. It's not a bad term. It's a term that makes you reliable in the NFL and keeps you a starting job if you're able to win games. Brock Purdy was able to win games last year. He has a great defense behind him, a lot of weapons on that offense. I'm not going to go too far, but as long as he can get past this injury, I think you're looking at a quarterback 2 who ideally you slot in as your quarterback 3, because I just don't think he lends much weekly upside is the only thing, because I don't think he offers a ton rushing. I think he's mostly a passing quarterback. So with that said, that's all I really have for Purdy. I don't want to go too far down the road because
he's like Mac Jones, essentially.
Sure, but much cheaper to acquire originally.
Going back to that last question, Bailey Zappi might be a good backup to stash too. We've seen him come in and do really well if you're stashing backups. But
all right, so just picked up Cedric Tillman with a 310, traded up from the 405, gave up 410. Those became Tyler Scott and Charlie. Well, you traded Charlie Jones away. How could you?
Now I don't like it as much.
I think it's fine. I mean, when you're playing around this late in drafts, I like what you're doing. I like that you're working up the board with excess picks. I'm fine with this. Cedric Tillman, somebody who has decent upside. Long term, you're not looking for much soon, I don't think. But as early as next year, things open up. I believe Donovan Peoples-Jones is a free agent this offseason. He could be on the move. In slot Cedric Tillman, I think. So it's possible, but never know. Nate, do you want to argue about something? You want to argue here?
Sure.
Do you think there's a case? Do you think there's a case for Marvin Harrison Jr. over Caleb Williams at the 101 next year in Superflex drafts. If I have Wilson and Olave working on JSN, I just want to complete my OSU wide receiver room. And I feel that, man. I feel that a ton.
Oh, man.
I just love that concept. What do you think, Nate? Is there an argument to be made at this point? It is early for sure, but
no.
What do you think?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Not unless you already have Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson on your team.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, just look at startup drafts. As good as Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are, unless you're Mike Bauer, you are taking a quarterback in the first round.
Well, hold on. I was also drafting like right after the quarterback cliff. So I didn't want to reach for a quarterback. I took an elite level wide receiver, and there's nothing wrong with that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. That's fine. I think you're like the 108, right? So or 109 or something like that. So
yeah, I was like the 108, 109, somewhere at the back end of the first round.
But Caleb Williams is going to be in that top 8 before Jefferson and Chase go. And I think Marvin Harrison has just as good of a chance to be in that Jefferson Chase tier at some point. I think if anyone currently in college, is the clearest path to that level. But still, that level just isn't quite to the same level as having Caleb Williams be a top 5 quarterback in Dynasty. And that's the level we also are looking at best case with Williams. So if we're going to look best case with Harrison, we got to look best case with Williams. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the quarterback value is where it's at. So I'm still taking Caleb. I can't really get behind taking Marvin Harrison over him unless you're just absolutely stacked at quarterback already. And you really, really need wide receiver.
And even then, trade back to 102 then. Do something. But
and the good thing is you could draft Caleb Williams, and then later on, if you decide you don't want Caleb Williams, you could use him to get Marvin Harrison or a different wide receiver that you really like. So
probably.
Bob makes a great point. Trade back to 102 and then pick up plus assets on top of it. They get a really good quarterback in Caleb Williams, and then you get Marvin Harrison Jr. plus assets. So, Bob, I like your answer. I think that's the way I would do it if that's the route I want it to go.
The last thing I'll add is, Nate, you brought up a good point, bringing up the referencing of startup draft. If you're between 2 positional groups, especially, see where they're going in startup drafts. It's very obvious to me that Caleb Williams is going to be going ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. next year in drafts. Without a doubt, he's going to be. Anthony Richardson is quarterback 10 right now, going off at the 111. There is a 0% chance that Caleb Williams is not going at that spot or above that spot next year. And I think Marvin Harrison probably can be in that wide receiver 15 range starting up in startup drafts, if not a little higher. But you're still not comparing. You're comparing 2 people that are about a round apart in a startup. And if you ever have a question between those 2, especially position groups, like I said, in a super flex, take the value at the position where it signifies on a startup draft board, because that's how they're seen in the holistic view of a dynasty. So it's just a good way
what happens? Bijan's the RB1 in Dynasty right now. It has been for the majority of the offseason.
Sure.
What happens next year when we're to August and Marvin Harrison Jr. is a top 5 wide receiver off the board already?
I mean, he'd still be in the
he's going to be a mid.
He'd still be in the second round.
Early second, maybe at best.
And Caleb Williams is a first round pick. It's still
too
much of a get ready.
In a startup, if he's
I'm not saying he won't be, but
and Caleb Williams is a late first round pick, then in a startup draft, you could theoretically get both. If you're snaking, you're going to get both of them. So there you go. Look at that.
Just run another league. There you go.
Yeah. Just patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. You want to get it in leagues, be like, I want to start a league so I get both of these guys. Let's do it up. I'd love to be in that league with you. I say that now, but I probably won't.
Yeah.
All right.
What we got next, Bob?
We got something from Sean popping in. Would you guys trade Dak Prescott and Jahan Dotson for Lamar Jackson and one QB 12-team keeper? Nate answers last, please. I see why you did that because there's a little bias here. I mean, I think it depends on the start. If it's a start 9 or less, I'm probably in the camp of tearing up to Lamar Jackson because I'd just rather do that. If you're looking at an 11, I'm probably keeping Dak and Jahan because I think that pairing is going to score more than Lamar Jackson will on most weeks. So I'd make the trade in a smaller league because of, you need the more elite players because you have less people to start. But if you're starting a smaller league, I'd go for Lamar. Thoughts, Mike?
I agree with Bob on this one. I hate losing Jahan Dotson. But then again, if this is the type of trade that pushes you over the top, wouldn't hesitate to do it. All right. Mr.
Well,
answer last.
It's a start 11, actually.
Oh, you know
And
this. You're in
oh
this.
yeah, no, this is a trade
personal.
between Sean and I.
Oh,
Sean.
He's gonna say just see.
I don't like what I've been a part of now. I feel dirty.
I feel dirty and I like it
that.
for the record. So let's keep going.
I feel like I screwed
it's
Sean
a start
up.
8 with 2 IDP slots additional, and then a kicker slot as well for a start 11 total. It's a league of Mike.
Oh, see, that doesn't count. That doesn't count then.
Mike made the league. It's the Dynasty Rewind Listener League, one of them, one of the many that we have. And this is the OG one. I'm a pretty good team. You guys know it's hard for me to trade away Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
Rashawn's really pulling my heartstrings here.
I mean,
he just needs to give me something back. That way I'm not losing one of my favorite players and going from 2 to 1 assets. Just give me something back.
So it's technically there's 2 IDP slots, you said, and a kicker.
Yep.
So it's technically a start 8, right?
Yeah.
It's Lamar Jackson. No contest for me personally.
Sean, if you find a way to get Reggie Roberson in there, you really want to tug at Nate's heartstrings. I think you can get it done, man.
Look at this. He just gave me a 4th.
Oh, how cute.
Oh, baby.
All right. We took it.
Oh,
live on the air.
This is amazing. I love what I'm seeing right here. Job well done. Well played, Sean, by the way.
Very, like I said, don't like being a part of that, but here we are. So Fields, Richardson, Love, Murray, 12 teams, start 11, 3 running backs, 3 wide receiver, 0.5 PPR. What QB would you look to move for a running back and a pick or hold all 4? I think you talked to Murray earlier based on chat, but I missed it. LOL. So honestly, with that grouping, man, that's tough. Who do you want to get off of? I mean, if you're competitive, I'd be concerned about having Murray on my roster and Richardson.
Yeah.
And some concerns with Love. I think he's a fine quarterback 3 to have, but I don't feel confident in either of those other 2 as a quarterback 2 right now. Fields is the only one I'm probably not moving or not interested in moving. What do you need at running back? Do you need a top end running back, or do you just need like a Miles Sanders? If you need a Miles Sanders, move Jordan Love for Miles Sanders plus a second, something like that. Or if you need somebody a little higher, maybe you need a J.K. Dobbins, move somebody like Kyler Murray, get J.K. Dobbins, and maybe even a first, something along those lines. I think depending on what you want at running back, that's maybe find the running back you want and let that dictate who you move for that move. I think that would be maybe the best course of action, because all these guys have pros and cons of why to have them or not have them. If you're competitive, which I assume you are, if you're looking at a running back. What do you guys think? Yeah,
like I want to sell Kyler Murray, but we just talked about how devalued he is. You can't not getting anything worth it. So in that case, maybe I'm moving off Love, but because I think Richardson, you got to keep him for his upside. If you have him, while Love, he's a guy I want to hold as well. But if we're moving off one of these guys, it's probably Love, because I'm probably swinging upside here with Fields already. So I got Richardson as well. I'll move off of Love, try to go after an RB and a pick. I think that sounds good. I think, Bob, you said Sanders plus?
Yeah,
like that.
For Love, Sanders plus. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that.
This is tough because, like you guys said, I hate moving from Richardson, but I think he's going to give you the best return right now. But then there's question marks with Jordan Love and Kyler Murray. So in this situation, Murray is the guy that I want to move the most. But in that case, that's the guy I'm going to try to dangle first. The guys that you want to move the most, I would tier it personally. Make a list from 1 to 4 guys that you're more comfortable moving. You start moving those guys. Like, all right, I'm more comfortable with moving Kyler Murray. I'm going to talk to this manager. Can I get this running back? And then we could add in blah, blah, blah. Okay, that didn't work. Now let's move to Jordan Love. And now I'm going to talk to this guy. However you tier these guys, because like we've talked about, you never start with your best offer. It's just like when you negotiate for a salary, the company's always going to try to lowball you and then you negotiate. It's the same thing. So I would start with Murray. For me, the way it would go would be Murray, Love, Richardson, Fields. Do I think the upside of Richardson is better? Yes, but we haven't seen it yet. I do have some concerns about Anthony Richardson too. I watched him play against the Eagles Thursday night, and look, he's great. He's fantastic. He's electric, but he's also really, really inconsistent. I do think Shane Steichen is probably the best coach for him in the NFL. He also needs to calm down. It was just a preseason game. We really didn't care that you guys beat us, and you were also playing against second, third team guys in the third quarter. So, but good for you though, Anthony Richardson.
Mike. Let people have their wins.
Yeah, good for you, Anthony Richardson, I guess. So,
all right. Thoughts on Zay Flowers and his possible future?
Nate,
we love Zay Flowers here. We're big fans. Yeah,
big fans of Zay Flowers.
I think you're looking at wide receiver 2 most likely in the grand spectrum of things as Nate fixes his nose a little bit as he's frozen, but that's okay. Yeah, I like Zay Flowers a lot. I think he has opportunity in this offense, despite it being somewhat crowded, quote unquote, with a wide receiver who hasn't really played in the last 2 years, and then another wide receiver who hasn't really played in the last 2 years. But you do have Mark Andrews there, so I think either way, Mark Andrews number 1 target in this offense, at least for especially like the good targets, high value targets, touchdowns, big plays and all that. But Zay's going to make his mark. Zay's a great player, explosive player. Not a lot of bad things to say about the guy. Thoughts to you, Mike, before we kick it to the Ravens fan?
Oh, I completely agree. I'm on board with Zay Flowers. I'm excited in this offense. And yeah, it's crowded, but I feel like the Ravens have a way of weeding through their crowded situations pretty early in the season. John Harbaugh doesn't like to lose preseason, regular season, so he's going to figure it out real quick and get his best players of football.
Sure. Nate?
Yeah, I am very excited about Zay Flowers. Todd Monken's offense treats the slot wide receiver very well, and Zay Flowers looks to be playing the slot for the Baltimore Ravens offense this year. I think Lamar is going to I think he has a great throw of the ball, and I think he's going to get to show that off this year. It's going to be kind of spread throughout. I don't think Zay Flowers is the bona fide wide receiver 1 throughout most of the season. I think that it is a combination of all 3, OBJ, Bateman, and Flowers. And of course, Andrews is going to be probably the leading target share of any of those 4 guys. But I think Zay Flowers by the end of the season will kind of be the 1A of that group because of his ability to create yards after the catch. And I think he's kind of the Jahan Dotson of this year's draft class because he's a guy you can pick up late first. He's going to be a wide receiver that's going to be looked at as a top 25 dynasty wide receiver going forward.
Yeah, and I'd argue that there's not going to be as many arguments over who's the wide receiver 1 in that offense as there is with a Dotson and McLaurin. So speaking of Jahan Dotson, what is the most surprising wide receiver you would take Jahan Dotson over? This is a tough question.
This is a tough question.
Because I mean, so is this a conversation of like at value? Or just straight up? Because if I could, get Jahan Dotson plus for a Deebo Samuel, I would. But I think if you're talking straight up, man, Jahan Dotson's like a wide receiver 36 right now. Let me see if I can pull something up.
Yeah,
you think
my Wi-Fi has had its issues. I don't think I can pull up any ADP right now, Bob. So you got to let me know.
I'm working.
Who's ahead of Dotson? I'm trying to rack my brain here, but I'm going to need your resources.
Give me 2 shakes of the sauce bottle. It's a good question. I mean,
I'll take him over Calvin Ridley. I'm not sure if that might be surprising.
Oh yeah, I think so too. He is ahead of Jahan Dotson, I believe. So ahead of Jahan Dotson right now, there's Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Chris Godwin, Deebo, DJ Moore. Yeah, Jahan Dotson's at wide receiver.
Too many players in front of Dotson.
Yeah,
I'll take him in front of Deebo. I'll take him in front of I said Deebo. I'm trying to think of who else said in there.
Yeah.
But
pretty much everybody, honestly.
A couple different players. Chris Godwin, I'll take him over Chris Godwin, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. So wide receiver 23 and 24 is Deebo and Godwin. Would you take him over, and you said Calvin Ridley is wide receiver 21 right now. What about Christian Watson? That's probably the biggest gap I can find where you'd think about it. Jordan Addison's up at wide receiver 19 too.
Look, it's really going to come down to what does Hal do. And if Hal continues to look how he's looked this preseason, I will take if beginning of the season that offense doesn't have to look great, just looks solid. Then I'm taking Dotson over Watson, unless Watson's really pulled out as the wide receiver 1 on Green Bay. But that's my worry with Watson is that he's not going to be the bona fide wide receiver 1 there because they're going to be trying to spread the ball to a bunch of different positions.
All right.
I think Dotson's one of 2 guys that are just going to be getting a lot of the ball.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. So this sounds like a rough situation for our buddy Dane. I adopted an orphan team who is absolutely terrible. I only have 24 seconds, my own, probably a higher 24 second, probably like 201, 203, and what I assume will be a late 24 second. What should I do with those? I don't want to just say tier up to trade up into the first, because, one first round pick isn't going to do a whole heck of a lot for you. This is a tough situation. He does have lots of 25 draft capital though. So what does he need to do here to get out of this hole that is not hitting up us for a roster review at this point? Which, if you're interested in a roster review from anybody on the channel, link is in the description for that. Details in the description as well. So check that out. But I mean, sell off what you can for anything you can. Get more draft capital. If your team
invest in cryogenics and just freeze yourself for a year and come back next year.
Yeah, take your pick of approach, but I definitely think sell off what you can, and if you can sell anything to get your first round pick back, that would be a huge step. And I'm not saying anything is going to be 1 for 1, but if you can maybe tier up with those seconds to maybe close to a mid to late first, then move that first for your first plus whatever valuable asset you have. That might be your only bet to really get out of this anytime soon. Because this is rough. I mean, only having 24 seconds, you have some 25 draft capital to throw around. Getting that first next year, not to necessarily draft that player, but to then use that pick, that 101 pick, to trade down as much as you possibly can, build up more for 25. That would probably be my approach to getting somewhere with this team. But definitely a rough go for that roster, to say the least. Nate is struggling over here. Mike, your thoughts on this one? Getting out of this hole? There's Nate.
You gotta set your lineups, and you gotta not check your scores too much, and you just gotta kind of let it happen, because you don't want to overpay. And Bob, what you said is great. 124 first is not going to help you as much as 224 seconds. You're going to obviously keep tuning into this channel. We're going to tell you what to do with those seconds. I want to know how much 25 draft capital you have. If you can move some of that for some 24 draft capital, that would be fine. I'd be okay with that. Like if let's say you have multiple 25 firsts, right? If you move that and a 24 second to get back up into the first round of 2024, be okay with that, because you're going to have to pay to get back up in there. That way you have a first and a second. Those two picks are going to be more valuable than just 2 seconds. But it's hard. Bob is also right again. Sell off what you can. Keep some good players. Be active on the waiver wire. That's what I tell these rebuilding teams, is be the most active player on your waiver wire, because there are times where guys pop off. And if you could beat these guys, you have a lot of fab, or if there's waiver order, depending on how your league is set up, get those guys on your roster. People are going to want them. People are pushing for the championship. They're going to pay for these guys. Get as much draft capital as you can. You want to just maybe, be very active. Do whatever you have to do to get as much draft capital as you can next year. But you have to be active. Rebuilding teams should be among the most active teams in the league, in my opinion, because you always have to be making moves. Always. You can't just set it and forget it and I'll figure it out next offseason.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. Excuse me.
Going back to a previous question with Fields, Richardson, Love, Murray, we had the discussion of Williams over Marvin Harris Jr. for value. I still say yes, because what happens now? Now, let's say you have this same roster. You add Williams to this mix, you can move Richardson, possibly Murray, depending on how Fields and Richardson both pan out. You can move one or the other for Williams plus, or not Williams, Marvin Harris Jr. plus. So absolutely, I think you just have to, play the value game a little bit with this, and strategy wise, you stick with the highest value piece, and then you navigate to a better, filling need by a trade versus draft pick. Anything else to add to that one, boys?
I will say it is important. So when we're giving out advice on this YouTube channel, we're just doing it for a generalized league.
Sure.
Know your league. If you have a league mate who lives in Ohio probably like, let's say Columbus, and he's a big Ohio State fan, okay? He goes, the Ohio State every time he talks about the college, okay? You might have to go draft Marvin Harrison Jr. in the 101 because you might never get him otherwise. You know, if that's your league and you have this quarterback stable and you know you can't trade around and get value and, you know, take advantage of it, you know what? You can go take Marvin Harrison Jr. in that instance because at that point, he might be the most valuable player in your league.
True. I think that's a great point because I've seen some wacky trades where people will send far more than they should. And that's the problem is, you know, when you get into quote unquote home leagues, especially, there's just not a lot of good value gauging going on. Not a lot of fair value. People let their emotions take over. And that's fine. You're having fun. I don't care. But if you want to win some money, take advantage of those things.
Can I give you a really good example of that, Bob?
Sure.
This was the year that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. I was in a home league with a ton of Eagles fans. I had Jay Ajayi. He got traded to the Eagles. The second that happened, my phone was blowing up. I mean, so stuff like that. And here's the thing. I'm always team never Eagles running back unless it was Miles Sanders because I knew he was the guy. But at that point in time, it was LeGarrette Blount. It was Jay Ajayi. I was like, there's going to be a split. I know that. Wendell Smallwood was still getting carries, I think. So I sold him, and I sold him for quite a haul. So great point. Home leagues, these guys, local, they get into the local team. People just go nuts. Move off.
Yeah. Let's see here. I had the next comment I was going to do up, but all right. So one quarterback league has the first pick. Who's number one in a startup draft? PPR, Jefferson, or just solidify that quarterback? For me, it's Jefferson.
Yep.
I understand Patrick Mahomes is extremely valuable. I can't bring myself to do it in one quarterback. I just can't. As much as I'd love to, you know, it's pretty likely you can get, you know, someone like Josh Allen at the 210
Hurts,
or 212,
Jackson.
Hurts, Burrow, Herbert, any of these guys. You can solidify quarterback without selling your soul with the first pick, in my opinion. So I couldn't do this.
And I think with the first pick, I think if you're in the position where you're in a startup and you have an open board, I think I'd go with Chase just because he's got the 1 year younger. You know, at that point, if that's the tiebreaker, because I think they're very, very similar, and I have to make the choice, I think I'll take Chase with the 101 just because I'm getting one extra year. When they're so close, that's the tiebreaker for me in a startup.
Sure. And you figure link to a better quarterback longer. That's another, better quarterback, higher value quarterback, more than likely longer. Kirk Cousins' future in Minnesota kind of up for grabs. Will this be made into a YouTube video so I can watch the parts I was late to? Maybe. We'll see. It'll be up on the channel either way as a replay or whatever they call it. So it'll be up there still that you can go back to once it's not live. Looking at dealing DK for DJ Moore to get out of my 2 Seattle wide receivers drafted JSN and wanted to stack Fields with his new number 1. Discrepancy between those two. Any pieces to add? I don't think it's crazy. Maybe a second to get on top of DJ Moore. Nothing.
Something like a second.
Yeah. I mean,
I probably prefer a player because I kind of want that to be like an early second. So I'd probably rather prefer a player valued around an early second.
Or if he's projected to be an early second anyway, you know, is that still fine? Or does it come down to if you're competitive that you'd still want the player regardless?
I mean, I would love to get a guy like Marvin Mims in addition, like a wide receiver like that.
Oh, I would love
Jaden Reed.
Sure.
What about a running back? What if you could get like even if it's an Alexander Madison who's the starting running back this year, if you could pull off something like that? I mean,
I don't love Madison, but I don't mind that value range.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if you could get that on top of DJ Moore for DK, unless you're throwing like a second back, which but I would navigate from, you know, if you are in that power play position of you have the more valuable asset tearing down, look at your team needs and then scan their roster for what shakes out to be closer to an early second value. Go from there, you know, just insert player you like here and then go from there. You know, it doesn't have to be super cut and dry player wise, but somebody who helped your team out one way or another. If you're competitive, make it a decent wide receiver. If you need another one that's maybe a little older that you can get at value, that's, you know, still valuable production wise. If it's not, take a Marvin Mims, who might have some early opportunity this season. We don't know yet, but
for sure.
And if it's like a tight end premium league, then this is a great place to find a good tight end too. Maybe like Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer, like
Chig.
What about this? If you're competing and you add something on top of DK Metcalf because you want to get out of that stack, what if you got like DJ Moore and Joe Mixon? If you're competing,
you would definitely take that if you're competing.
Yeah,
but you need to add more to that.
If they're a rebuilding team, they might be down to do that.
Yeah,
but probably not.
My question is, why do you want to get out of DK? I think the value might be higher for a guy like JSN. I know you just drafted him, but DK's been just really consistent his entire career.
DK is the wide receiver 2 on his team, and he always will be. He's a little big brother.
Who's the wide receiver 1? Tyler Lockett?
Tyler
was last year.
You think? I think DK's the guy. Well,
I think he's a great player, but I think he's what T. Higgins is and was before T. Higgins is what he is. So I don't hate DK by any stretch, but I think that's I think that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of player evaluations and situation. But talking about situations, let's order running backs from 1 to 5, best to worst.
Worst to worst. Well, starting with Bigsby, of course. Starting with Tank Bigsby.
Really?
Then, I'm starting with Tank Bigsby, then going down to Charbonnet, then Kendre Miller, and then give me Jalen Warren.
I'd go.
And then give me Pacheco at worst.
Really?
I don't like Pacheco at all. Sorry. I think, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was actually a top running back through the first 4 weeks of last year's season. And he's been getting
top 15 running back all the time when he's playing.
And he's going to still get work. And McKinnon's there, Pacheco's there, Deneric Price has got a lot of great reviews. I just don't trust anyone in the Chiefs backfield. Give me the other guys who I know have, solid backup roles, not one of 4 running backs who might get a chance.
Well, I did it the correct way. I organized it in what I think these guys are going to get opportunity-wise. Forgive me. So I went Pacheco, Tank Bigsby, Zach Charbonnet, Kendre Miller, and Jalen Warren. We need to chill with the Jalen Warren stuff. Nate and I, we love Jalen Warren when we talked about him on the Patreon last year. Jalen Warren is not going to take snaps away from Najee Harris. He's not. It is not happening, okay? It's just not. It's foolish. If Jalen Warren takes snaps away from Najee Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers fans will take Matt Canada out in the street and shoot him. I can guarantee that right now.
Easy.
So, Joanna, that is the way that I organized it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Miller as probably my one here. That is kind of the long-term solution, I think. But I like Tank as well. I like Charbonnet. Those 3, I think you can split either way. Pretty happy with. Then it's Pacheco and Warren for me. Warren, clear handcuff. You could argue Pacheco also clear handcuff, and I just think he's probably a better player, more aggressive runner, and in a better offense that isn't run by Matt Canada. So I'll list it out how I graded them as prospects. Kendre Miller, I think I had Charbonnet second, Tank Bigsby, then I'll take Pacheco and Warren. So a little variation here. I think the top 3 are all the same everywhere. I could be wrong. I forgot how you listed exactly, Mike. What was your top 3?
I just went based on what I project opportunity to be for this season. So I went Pacheco, Tank, Charbonnet, Miller, and Warren. Also, you know what's crazy for the Steelers? They could have fired Matt Canada and hired Eric Bieniemy.
Could have.
Want to throw that out there. It's just frustrating if you're a Steelers fan.
Hey, the Steelers look good so far in the preseason. We'll see if that means anything.
Yeah, hopefully they open it up a little bit more. I'm excited for the Steelers offense as a whole. So excited to see what they do out there.
Yep.
Gibbs or JSN in half-point PPR. Have Najee and Bijan at running back. As Sun God, Drake London, Judy, Elijah Moore at wide receiver. Unlikely to contend this year, going for 2024 contention. It's tough, man.
If we're not contending, I know that must be some really good teams in this league. Yeah. But if we're unlikely to contend this year, we're looking at 2024. What I would do here is I would go after Jahmyr Gibbs, and I would look to trade away Najee Harris to find a wide receiver that I can pick up. And I'm going to be trading Najee a little bit into the season when people see that production, because I don't think Najee I don't love his fit in this timeline. I think he will be productive next year, but he's going to start losing value after this year. This is going to kind of be his peak year, I think, value-wise. Like it's usually like 3rd, 4th year for running backs on the rookie contracts. So I'd be looking to move off of Najee, fulfill that role with Gibbs, have Gibbs Bijan moving forward. That's a great running back room, and then start trying to build up my wide receiver room to give me the depth beneath Sun God in London and Judy.
So then why not move JSN first and then move or draft? Hold on. Might go to you. I had something thought up, but I completely lost my.
I know, but now I'm really confused by what you just did. So we're choosing between Gibbs or JSN here. I'm assuming this draft hasn't happened yet, which, by the way, don't hate on late season rookie drafts, everybody. Just because not everybody drafts in May doesn't mean it's a bad league. If you're not contending this year, then I would say JSN for sure, just because JSN looks like he might miss a little bit of time with that hand injury. Although now I'm hearing different things. He's going to be back, but I don't know. But yeah, I mean, he's gonna come on slowly. I'm sure the Seahawks aren't going to rush him. He was a high draft pick. Excuse me. That being said, I like Nate's philosophy here of drafting Gibbs and moving on from Najee. Najee is a little bit older, and he was an older prospect coming out too, which is, I don't want to say it's a death sentence for running backs, but it certainly doesn't help. That is the approach that I would take. Also, I want to know what the rest of the teams in this league look like if you're not contending.
Maybe he's got no quarterbacks.
Yeah, maybe that's true. Then maybe you should take
still holding on to Tebow.
Then I would draft Gibbs and move Najee Harris, see what kind of quarterback you can get for that in that circumstance. Because you got some decent you have the best wide receiver in the NFL. You have Drake London. So we got to get our Drake London shots in at least once on this show. But I like Nate. I like your
2 or 3 in now.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm sticking with JSN. I made the mistake of going Gibbs over JSN in a draft this year already, and I regret every single second of it so far.
Really?
And this is a league where I have a ton of oddly enough, I have a ton of running back depth, quote unquote. But I'm taking JSN. Even if it's a half point, I still think JSN becomes the one in that offense. That offense has proven to be good, even with Geno at the helm. And I don't think you're wrong for saying Gibbs, Nate, and that strategy. I don't hate it one bit. I don't see a lot of flaw in it. I have more positive opinion of Najee long term, but ultimately don't hate the move at all to draft Gibbs and then take Najee and move him for a wide receiver that could be close to JSN level of production. Personally, I can't make the move to go Gibbs over JSN right now, and that's just me. That's where I'm at, player to player. Even in a 0.5 PPR, Gibbs is going to get his work too, but yeah, I just struggle with that. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. But like I said, I don't think you're wrong for having that opinion of it. But moving on, commissioning a league. We had a keeper league for 6 years, agreed to move to Dynasty. Since the startup, it's been the least active league I've been in. Any suggestions to increase league activity? This is tough because, I mean, you would think that because keeper is more redraft than it is Dynasty. Let's just get that out of the way, and that's fine. I think it's a great transition. I think what might have been good instead of doing a new startup, and maybe you kept players in the startup, I don't know, but if you kept players, maybe that would have helped keep people more engaged with the team players they already had. And maybe this startup is just like this year's draft, basically. Since it's transitioning to Dynasty, you expect that there will just be more long-term interest over the season because you have a whole bigger team to look after. I think the best thing you can do is just be active in the chats yourself, be active about, if you're on Sleeper, if they're unsure of how to use things, be very helpful with how to use that. We had a league I am still a part of, was on Yahoo for like 3 or 4 years. And these people are just not technologically savvy, let's say. And it was a tough transition getting everybody over there. A lot of people just didn't know how to use the app. It was a lot different, as anybody who's transitioned from Yahoo to Sleeper knows. And just being available to like help them through that process and all of that is very helpful. So just, whatever you got to do to help people make this transition. If people have questions about how a Dynasty is different, since we, after 6 whole years, we decided to change to Dynasty. I don't know if that's the case. That's just something that happened with me switching from a keeper to a Dynasty league. Yeah, because it shouldn't be inactive. It shouldn't be inactive or less active. What are your guys' thoughts on keeping the leagues active or more active?
You need some foreplay, man. You got to send out some trade offers. You got to make some waiver claims. You can't just expect it to go from 0 to 100.
Just start cutting good players for the sake of the league.
Not recommend.
Get them on waivers.
Talk to your league mate. Say, hey, what's up? How you feeling about your team? This or that. Can I help you with anything? Blah, 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 stuff like that. Yeah. Throw out some little trades to people. Doesn't have to be anything great. Not everything is. But look, you do that. People see it. Things start to steamroll. Show them some trading videos on the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel. Some people, when they're new to Dynasty, they're afraid to trade because they don't want to get ripped off. They don't want to feel like they're ripping anybody off. And, when you have the league chatter, when you see a trade get done, oh, that was bogus. This is going to crash the league. You need to stomp that crap out now. We don't talk like that here. By the way, no league has ever folded because of one trade. Find me that league. Show me. Never seen it. This trade is going to kill this league. Oh my God. No, it's not. Stop that nonsense. So, throw out a couple low ball trades that'll get the ball rolling. And by the way, roster cuts are coming soon. So your least active league of all time is going to be a very active league really soon, probably Tuesday or Wednesday-ish, I would imagine, after people start getting cut, because there's always those surprise cuts every single year.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say here is with Dynasty, so we switched to a Dynasty. What makes Dynasty so exciting is we're looking towards the future. So share 24 content. Take that mock draft that Bob and I did on Monday or Tuesday and throw it out there into the group chat. Get people excited about the 24 class because you want to get people excited about picks. That way people who are looking at this year, looking at next year, they know how to, hey, I don't need this pick. I want to go this year. Hey, I want more picks. I want to look towards next year. That when you get that variance, that's when leagues can get really exciting because you got trades that work for both teams, and that just makes trading a little bit easier. So once you have the variance, that makes it a little bit easier too. Sometimes right after the start draft, it's hard because everyone's in the middle and everyone drafted players they like. So usually I just don't expect startups to be super active in the first half of the season, first quarter of the season, or the lead up at least to the first season, because hey, I drafted all my players. I don't want to trade them. I drafted all these guys. I drafted guys I like. But once we get into the season and these values are going up and down so quickly and things are starting to turn around, some players are going injured, some teams get better, some teams get worse. That's when a lot of that activity can really get stimulated.
For sure.
All right, moving on to a question from one of our YouTube members. Check that out for bonus content. If you don't want to have a Patreon, we do have bonus content linked on here for members, a bunch of roster reviews, a bunch of the podcasts go up there as well. So check that out. This Darth Desmond also in our Discord as well, because you get that access as well. As long as your Discord is linked up and everything like that, everything should be smooth sailing. So yes, question: trading Fields, Pickens, and a 25 first for Patrick Mahomes in a Superflex 12 team. His other quarterback is Jalen Hurts. Is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak? Is it worth getting up here from Fields, Pickens, and a 25 first? I'm not opposed, honestly, to this deal. I don't think it's terrible. Moving at 25 first, I don't love the concept, but you do have 2 years to get it back. I hate that excuse for picks and reasoning, but it is a fact of the matter. But I just don't like it using it as a gateway to justify a trade. But I think value-wise, I think that's fair. I think Pickens, fairly low expectation of him. Fields, we love him. There's still question marks. Yeah, at the end of the day, there's still questions with Justin Fields. I'm not the one leading the charge on those questions, but I'm not, burying my head in the sand and acting like they're not there. So I'm pretty in on this deal. If you get a second back, that would feel
better. That would feel better. But I'm down with this trade. I'm down with this trade as well.
Yeah, especially stacking Mahomes and Hurts. Yeah, Superflex. I mean, you're going to have such a nice little grouping there to build around for a while. So I have Mahomes, Jacobs, Gibbs, Stevenson, Devonta Smith, Dotson, and Pitts as my core. What kind of team am I? I don't know if I'm win now or what. That wide receiver.
Tear it down.
I wouldn't tear it down, but man,
just need more wide receivers.
Can you use like Jacobs or Stevenson to tear down to a Miles Sanders and a wide receiver? That would be great. So you can keep your running back core together a little bit, keep somebody in there, and then get some wide receiver help. Maybe if you can invest, if you have 24 first or 25 first to invest into an Amari Cooper, seconds to invest in a Juju, just some competitive pieces that we can kind of, because it's hard seeing teams that have good running back rooms, but the wide receiver room is going to be what's holding you back. And in all honesty, Kyle Pitts is something too that, as much as we love him as a dynasty asset, I wouldn't call him a competitive one yet, in all honesty. I'm still, we're still waiting on that, outside of his rookie season, still waiting on some consistency in that offense. I think he's fine in the grand scheme of tight ends, and I think he's somebody worth having. Don't know if I want him as my tight end one on a competitive team right now. That's my big concern. So I think you're you're closer to competing than not, but you're also a good.
I think this team is in win now, and you just gotta support it,
gear it towards, and the best way to figure out how to do that
is like this,
something like that. So
I just put something together here. It's a little addition by extensive subtraction, but I'm assuming that this is a 12-team Superflex league. This is the assumption that I'm making here.
Sure.
So I moved Devonta Smith and Josh Jacobs for Justin Jefferson. The value is pretty close. You're losing a running back. You still got Gibbs. You still got Stevenson. I know Nate has high expectations for Jahmyr Gibbs, as do we all. You still got Stevenson. I hate losing Devonta Smith, but if you could use those two pieces to get the best wide receiver in both the NFL and fantasy football, especially if you're a win now team, it's a thought.
Yeah.
To get good players, you have to move good players.
Yeah.
And this is without me knowing of any of your picks or anything like that, just using what's given to me right here.
Yeah. My only concern with that is we want to tier up. And if it's a start 8, fine. But if it's, anything more than a 10, you're really diluting your roster. And while Jefferson is great, that puts you into where you need to go rebuild now. That's the only thing. And if they're fine with that, if you're fine with that, Dustin, I don't hate the move. I don't think it's a bad value move per se, but it is just something to think about. I think depending on your league format settings and things like that, that's going to be what kind of makes this a good trade or one that puts you in a direction you don't necessarily want to be in, is the only thing I'll add to that.
Breaking news, Josh Jacobs just signed a 1-year deal worth $12 million.
Woo! Let's go. Live on the
Good
air.
Deal.
Great stuff.
We'll take that.
That is
helps a little bit there for sure.
Breath
I have
of
a lot
fresh
of Josh
air
Jacobs
for
in
Josh
on
Jacobs.
Underdog. So
all I need now is
I'm
something to happen with Jonathan Taylor that's positive.
Please.
That would be ideal as well, for sure. Getting to the next one, Scott Walker, former governor of Wisconsin. Just kidding. I don't think this is the same Scott Walker. So 12-team Superflex PPR 0.5 tight end premium have Allen, Murray, Aaron Rodgers, and Mac Jones at quarterback contender this year. So I feel I need to hold Rodgers. What sort of value do I look for Murray or Mac to get a piece to help me win now? Man, Murray is a tough one right now. I think, ideally maybe wait if you can if you have the ability to move him later once he's back on the field and in game action, and then, keep one of the two for sure. But Murray is going to net you the best return either way. Mac is just not, I think he's a great quarterback 3 to have in this situation. I think Rodgers is a good enough quarterback 2. Allen hopefully supports that room enough, but I mean, I wouldn't be too opposed to trying to find a better quarterback situation than trying to move off of the quarterback room to help another area either. I wouldn't be opposed to doing something like that. I'm not saying move 2 quarterbacks for 1. I'm saying, can you move Aaron Rodgers and a first for somebody a little younger, kind of a thing, something like that.
For Tua?
I would love to get Tua for Aaron Rodgers and a 24 first, or if you can move Mac for Mac and a 24 first for Tua, which I think is possibly more likely depending on what that team is looking to do. I'd love to do that. And then you rock with 3 quarterbacks, you hold on to Murray, and then, maybe you move Rodgers later, or maybe you move Mac later. And whatever your biggest need is, you're probably looking at a guy that's going to come up a lot, Mac or Miles Sanders.
Yeah,
great running back fix
today.
I would, wherever you have a need, I'd look in that room and look for similar value across the board. What are your thoughts, guys?
Go to Nate first. I'm working something out here. So.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I like the idea of trading up from a Rod to a better player. I think, I don't like to sell Murray right now. I don't like to sell players that are so low on that value. So I want to hold him. So I don't hate the idea of holding on to all 4 of these guys if we need to, if Rodgers comes out strong and Max is our quarterback 3 and we're just stashing Murray. But Obviously, I want to move off Mac. Unfortunately, he's the lowest valued out of all of these guys. But I would love to see if I could find someone who needs a quarterback, whether that's a quarterback 2 desperately or just needs a quarterback 3 for depth. See if I can, throw Mac at them and get some wide receiver depth, get some running back depth. It might just be for a depth piece, but if I can find someone who's going to be basically filling in as a flex receiver, but a strong flex receiver with Mac Jones, I'd be willing to do that. Maybe like a Brandon Ayuk or a player of similar value. If you can get, maybe Jahan Dotson. I'll trade Mac Jones as my quarterback for Jahan Dotson.
Sure. Don't hate that.
Just looking at the values, you're talking about moving on from Mac Jones, and I'm okay with that. His value, believe it or not, using DLF Straight Analyzer, that's what we typically use on this channel. In this format, it's really close to Miles Sanders. It's separated by about 40 points. So if you're talking about moving on from one of these quarterbacks in a win now push, we're talking you're adding like a 24th third round pick, and then it's technically considered an overpay for Sanders by about 13 points. But that's a move that I'd be fine with making. There's been some questions about Mac Jones's future. Again, like I talked about before with Kyler Murray, I think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL next year. May not be with the Patriots. It may be. I don't know. But he would definitely be an upgrade in some spots. Forgive me, sorry. My allergies have been absolutely berserk all week. Thanks, Pennsylvania. But that's a move like that I'd be fine with making and then holding on to Kyler Murray for sure. It's the Aaron Rodgers value. I just feel like in a dynasty league, I understand he's still valuable. It's just with his age, he's a guy that's kind of hard to move on from. Sometimes people just don't want to buy. So that's how it goes, right?
Yep.
Have Mahomes in a 2 quarterback league with a super flex spot. So is this a 3 quarterback league? Is that my understanding? Or is it 1 quarterback and 1 super flex? Got Deshaun and CJ, which I'm assuming it's 1 quarterback with a super flex slot. Which one should I move as my team needs a running back? Depends what running back you want, which one you think can get the deal done, I think would be where I'd go. But if you think you're competitive, which is why I'm assuming you're looking for a running back, I'd look to move Stroud at this point for sure.
Yeah. Although I think Watson would give you the best return, of course, but if you're competing, you don't want to move on from him, like Bob said. So you really want to trust CJ Stroud as your quarterback 2 in a playoff push. I like CJ Stroud, but I don't.
It also makes a lot of sense too for a rebuilding team. Moving a running back would be in on a younger quarterback as well. So there is that thought to be had as well. Brian Ford loves Trey Lance, still thinks Pacheco is so overrated and overvalued. Ain't that the pot calling the kettle black, Brian?
He was the guy. Hey, listen, props to Brian Ford. I heard about Isaiah Pacheco first from him.
And now he hates him.
Wow.
how the turntables. So tanking this year, but I also love Tank Bigsby. So does Nate. When he's tearing up the stat sheet, need the points off the roster. What's your injured wide receiver should I be looking for if I were to move him? I'm not really in a moving Tank if I have him right now. I don't think you're going to get good value. I think Tank, as Dougie P has said, his role is going to increase as the season goes on. His value, as long as he's healthy, will continue to rise. I think right now you're kind of just in that damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I'd rather hold the talent and maybe sell later. But, because right now there's no telling where his valuation is going to go and who's going to get injured. So that's the only thing.
One of the things that they're saying here is that they're tanking this year, so they want to get the points off their roster.
Right.
Unless you're in an absolute dogfight with someone else tanking for the 101, I don't think Tank Bigsby's points this year are going to be enough to really sway. Especially if you're doing this with other players and you're moving other players off for injured players or draft capital. I don't think Tank Bigsby is going to do enough to really sway your draft position at the end of the day. I would much rather have him and keep him moving forward than move off of him just to have 120 less potential points at the end of the year.
If you're worried about that, put him on your taxi squad.
It counts. Taxi squad counts. Oh. Yep. So we've confirmed that.
I would hate to move on from Tank because I don't think ETN survives his first contract. We've seen Leonard Fournette get released early by the Jaguars. Their owner has showed whatever the coach wants to do, we're going to do it if that's what he thinks makes his team better. ETN is not Doug's guy. Tank was. He was drafted by him. So he has no guaranteed salary.
Love this narrative that I've started.
I'm being realistic here.
Dougie
Just
P's
like Jonathan Taylor was not Shane Steichen's guy. It's Evan Hull season in Indy, everybody. Maybe, who knows? So yeah, I don't know. I'm holding Tank, man. I get where you're coming from, but I just don't want to trade him at all.
What do we think the tier gap is in Dynasty between TJ Hockenson and the other top 3 tight ends? Kelsey, Andrews, and Pitts. I mean, yeah, I think he's right up there too. I think he's, on the outside looking in, and that's because we haven't seen back-to-back productive seasons yet. But I mean, Hockenson is ascending. He's an ascending talent. If he gets this contract locked up with his team, I mean, Hockenson is in a great position. He's a great player. Can he stay healthy? Can he put it together for 2 full seasons? We'll see what happens. There's a conversation where he's in this mix next year, and maybe it's Andrews, Pitts, and Hockenson, Kelsey, just because Kelsey's aging. But until he's gone, I'm not betting against Kelsey at this point. But like Hockenson a good bit
on DLF's ADP, so splitting hairs.
Yeah, I think Hockenson going to the Vikings. We've seen him be productive, but he's not the number 1 target on that offense like Kelsey and Andrews are of their offenses. And I expect Pitts to be as well, or at least 1A. So I think that's kind of keeps Hockenson away from that top tier. And I don't really have, Kelsey, like we said, until he stops, you just gotta assume he's gonna be the tight end 1 every single year. So what do I think the actual gap is? It's not quite a first round pick. There's not that much of a gap between them, but
a couple seconds.
Yeah,
maybe.
Like I'm not moving. I'm probably not moving down from Andrews to Hockenson for a second. I don't think Hockenson gives me that.
You think Hockenson and a first for one of these other tight ends in a second? You think that's a pick flip?
I think that works.
Okay. What is our preference and why as far as when you to do your rookie draft shortly after the NFL draft, or you like having extra time for an August draft? I think let the league decide. I honestly am have it whenever. I don't think there's one league I have that is like super, we need to do it at the last week of the, after preseason so we get through all the injuries and stuff. And I'm fine with that. I'm not as big on it because I think, doing it early does reward the people who have done the research already into scouting players and all of that. But just see what your league wants to do. There's no right or wrong answer, in my opinion, at least. Because not everybody can take the time to scout players before they're even drafted.
It's when your league is ready.
Or have the interest. So, yeah.
It's when your league is ready. If you don't have people that are tuned in throughout the NFL draft season and not really tuned into the NFL draft and everything that's happening like around that time, then you shouldn't have your drafts early May because they're not educated. You don't want to have people who've been, not paying attention all off season and then come back, waste the rookie picks. That's just not a good, indicator for the league to stay healthy and active. Mm-hmm. But if you have, so in that case, you want to have it near August when people start getting more tuned in, a bit more, I don't want to call them casuals, but casuals, they skip the off season. Now, if you have people who are heavily invested in the offseason and scrolling Twitter for 3 hours in the middle of June, those are the guys that you can have the draft in early May because they know what's going on.
I will tell you the worst time to do it is when day 3 starts, because that's when I had a draft once. I did not choose that time, but the people in that league were diehard. They're like, they wanted to start it Thursday night. And
I don't want it during the draft.
No, and you know what? Honestly, that was part of the reason why I left that league. And they required you have to do 1 trade a month, and I'm like, okay, but I can't get anybody to respond. Nobody wants to offer anything.
Here's
good.
A fifth for a fifth, real quick, just to meet my quota.
That's what happens. Like they were trying to force things, and when you do that, things don't really work out. So I can tell you that's the worst time to do it. I'm okay if you want to draft in May, you want to draft in June, you want to draft in August after preseason. I've been in a lot of leagues that do that, and don't shame leagues for doing that. People go, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
People go on vacation in June and July. Okay. I took a week off. I wasn't as in touch. Nate took 3 weeks off to spend some time with his wife, as he deserved. He was a little out of the loop for a while. So people take time off. They're spending time with their families. Football season is a grind for everybody, fantasy players, people that actually play the game. We need a breath. You know what I mean? Like, don't rush anybody. But I like May and June, personally.
Is this an overpay for Brandon Ayuk, Tank Bigsby, Pacheco, and a 24-second, or is it fair value? I mean, if I'm the Ayuk manager at this point, I'm kind of looking at this like it's just a lot of pieces that don't really move the needle for me. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad deal per se, but I'd want, maybe a better player and a second, is kind of how I would want that trade to look. Give me a rookie wide receiver that was a second round pick in 2023. Give me Jaden Reed in 24-second. Probably still not doing it, but I'd be interested more in something of that effect than just a lot of pieces. No, you don't have to. I know it's not close.
Just want to see.
But it's not close. Or on the Tank Bigsby Pacheco in the second. Yeah, that's not close either, I don't think. But either way.
It is an overpay. It's
really?
I
don't think
Bigsby Pacheco in a 24-second. The value on that is 298.9. Sorry, I said too weird. And Brandon Ayuk's value is 250.2 for a 12-team Superflex. Well, I have to add tight end premium. Hold on. Now the value gap is even wider. It went from 296.9 to 232.2.
Interesting. So I guess it's, yeah, I mean, you could probably get away with not moving one of the running backs, but like I said, as an Ayuk manager myself, most cases I'm not looking at this offer. I'm not sniffing the offer unless I happen to have ETN. Maybe I'm interested.
If you take Tank Bigsby out of there, the value is much closer. Then it goes Brandon Ayuk is 232.2. Pacheco in a second is 239.2. So the value is much tighter. And I think we all think that Tank Bigsby's long-term value is better than that of Isaiah Pacheco's. I like Pacheco for this year. After that, it's a lot of question marks because he was a late-round draft pick. The Kansas City Chiefs, they just kind of churned through running backs. So,
sure.
If you want to hold Pacheco for this year, if you're making a push, I'm fine with that. If you want to move on from him for the long-term value of Brandon Ayuk, I'm fine on that as well. I like Ayuk long-term. I like him this year. I like him long-term too.
Yeah, me as well. So anything else to add, Nate, before we move on?
Nope. No, I think you guys do well.
All right. 10-team PPR Superflex. Debo for Javonte. Other running backs are Breece Hall, Sanders, and Khalil Herbert. Other wide receivers are Adams, Brown, AJ Brown, or Marquise Brown, Kirk Davis, and Deontay Johnson. I don't hate it.
I like it.
I don't necessarily. I think value-wise, it's fine. But if you're trying to compete, I still have reservations for Javonte this season. I know everything seems to be green flags, sunshine and roses. Did see a report just came out a couple days ago that they are talking about easing him into the season, which is smart because they know what the injury is and what he's coming off of. So, if he's healthy, I think you could have a good season with him if you're trying to compete. But I still have my concerns overall. But I would maybe look to, go elsewhere. Like, can you move Debo for Najee? I would be, if you're trying to compete, at least I would love to do that. And maybe you have to add a second or something. Maybe get a third back.
This team looks like a competing team too.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable with that as well. Yeah, it's Marquise Brown. He doesn't think he's competing with Breece this year.
True. That's another good point too, is that you have Breece Hall too. So I don't hate Javonte, but then you do have the problem of him being contract running back.
I like the idea for Najee.
Year running back.
Because if you get Najee, then you're good at running back. And then when Breece Hall is going 100% by midseason, you're feeling really good as a contending team. Javonte, unfortunately, kind of has the same timeline as Breece Hall. So you have just a slow start to the season. So even if your team's doing really well by week 6, 7, 8, if you started off 1-4, something like that, then you've already kind of, dug yourself a hole.
Najee might help you get there.
Yep.
So, yeah. So that's
green flag, sunshines, and roses, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. So would y'all trade Cole Kmet and Mike Evans for Kyle Pitts? Yes. Yep. If you can, if they're willing to do that, or another tight end willing to go after TJ Hockenson, we just mentioned, I'd be shocked if you could get Kyle Pitts for this. But hey, if you can do these things, hey man, do it. Don't, if this is the offer in your inbox, if this is what you're thinking about sending, I think you're a little light, but hey man, never know. Let's see. My pick is up in a 12-team Superflex 0.5 PPR. Have Burrow, Anthony Richardson, Murray, Olave, Christian Watson, Ayuk, and I'm up in round 7. Should I keep going wide receiver or target running backs? Take best value, IMO. I don't think, because here's the thing, is if you're drafting a running back who is a low-end running back 2 at this point, and you could be getting a wide receiver that is like a locked and loaded wide receiver 2, take whoever's going to score the most points at the end of the day, because points are going to be what's valuable. You have a young enough grouping. And honestly, with Anthony Richardson and Murray, those project like next year guys anyway, I'd soak up value on wide receiver or tight end if there's one kicking around in round 7. Happy with that too if they're sitting around. But anything else to add there, boys?
You nailed it, Bob.
All right. We are going to rifle through some of the rest of these questions as we look to wrap up here. Appreciate y'all for tuning in still.
Yes,
12 team start 9. PPR, quarterback, Allen, running back, Jacobs, Najee, Derrick Henry, and Gibson. Wide receiver are Diggs, Devonta Adams, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Quentin Johnson, DJ Chark, and our tight end is Kelsey. Thinking of packing up Evans and Henry for Tyreek, I'd be really shallow after. I mean, maybe. I mean, in a PPR, Gibson is a solid enough running back 3, I think. And maybe you can use a first to get like a Dameon Pierce or, a Miles Sanders, who we keep talking about on that running back. But at wide receiver, I'll take the high-end talent in Tyreek Hill. Happy to double down on, elite talent at the wide receiver position. I know some people are worried that he's only going to play 3 more years. That's the window we look at anyway. Who cares? If he's kicking around for 3 more years and starts to dwindle in his last year, good for you. You won a championship by then. All about this move, 100%.
Scared money don't make money.
He does have those 224 firsts he can use to get depth for it. And then, like we said, use those 24 picks to help that those players or help build out that roster that much more. Nate, welcome back. We just covered this point. We got you. We believe in you and your internet. Let's see. Traded William Hockenson and Devonta Smith for Pitts last offseason.
It happens.
Not awesome. It happens to the best of us.
You know what? That still has
terrible.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
There's worse things.
Yeah, for sure. 12 team, 1 quarterback, start 8. Give Travis Etienne 205 and a 24 first. Get Christian McCaffrey. I assume you are a competitive team if you have that 24 first and moving for McCaffrey. I'm pretty in on this deal. I think that's a fair enough value to flip around.
The only thing, I never like to trade 3 assets for 1. Obviously, It seems a little petty almost to ask for something back as well, because you just, this is pretty good value-wise. But
the start 8 too, keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, I want some fab, maybe a 3rd-round pick, something. Just give me something. I don't like to go down 2 assets.
Give me something.
Give me something.
All right.
Need a little something.
Thoughts on trading for Anthony Richardson for a contender or as a contender? I'm in a 12-team Superflex with Mahomes and no quarterback 2 can get Tannehill, but that still feels gross. Would give up a projected top 3 pick and a late first for Anthony Richardson. I mean, I would look to move that late first for a Kirk Cousins, a Jared Goff. If you're willing to move that top 3 pick still, you can get into some nice quarterbacks with that top 3 pick, close to the likes of, probably 2 is like the bottom of the barrel for what you get. You probably get a pick back. But I mean, a top 3 pick, you're looking at Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Drake May with that pick. So they're going to be locked and loaded. If there's a rebuilding team out there looking to move another top quarterback, you can just come to them and say, hey, here you go. Or take that top 3 pick and maybe send it back to that team if they're feeling like they might want that pick. You might be able to get an exponential return there.
Yeah, I mean, can I get like a end of a top tier player with the top 3 pick in a late first? Like, can I get like a Trevor Lawrence?
Sure.
Or a Justin Fields? I'd be willing to make that move as a competing team.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think, change what quarterbacks you're looking at and just reshape what you have the assets you're willing to move. Just find different assets to go get with them is all I'm saying. I think that's the takeaway here.
Bob, we need this newest comment from Curtis so I can rant.
Which is this one? Which one is this one?
A rant. Ooh.
Oh no.
You know what's about to happen.
I do know what's about to happen. This is scary. Go ahead.
All right. Well, Bob, do you want to read the comment?
Oh, yeah, sure. My startup is having rookie draft and separate from the startup draft, and order is determined by order of kicker drafted in the startup draft. No kicker league, pretty much a null pick. When would you do this draft, Nate?
Number one.
What else do you have to add?
This is a terrible idea. It's just a terrible idea. Okay. I just got to break it down for you guys. Okay. Startup draft. Okay. It's a snake. But like, hey, picking up Mahomes and whoever you pick up at 210, it does feel pretty equal to whoever you're picking up at the 112 and the 201. There's snake. The whole reason we do snake draft is because there's equal value, because there's obviously better players at the beginning of the draft than there are later in the draft, later rounds, early rounds, things like that. Go to the rookie draft. Yes, if you snake the rookie draft, we're still getting better talent at the 201 for the person who's getting the 112 than person at 101 is getting at the 212. But the gap of value from the 101 to the 112 is such a huge gap. Going from Bijan Robinson this year to Zach Charbonnet at the 112, that gap is multiple rounds. And I mean, many, many rounds in a startup draft. That is a huge value gap. That is not just from the beginning of the first round to the end of the first round in a startup draft. That's not even from the beginning of the fifth round to the end of the fifth round in a startup draft. That is multiple rounds of value that is changing. So I do not like this where you have this separate. I think that is just, it's difficult, especially after the rookie draft, especially when we're this far in the offseason. They should be together. If you want to still do a rookie draft, it should be where you're drafting kickers as draft picks, not as draft slots. Because if whoever's drafting their kicker last, obviously they're going to punt it at that point. But, picking like the 108, it's just you're not getting nearly as much value as whoever's getting the 101. Because if you get the 101 in the second round, something like that, you're not just picking up Bijan, you're also getting the 201. And you're just picking up so much value with those picks. I don't like drafting slots. I like drafting draft picks. I would prefer them to be together. If you do have to do this, draft that 101 literally as soon as possible. As soon as, the top 8 quarterbacks are gone, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, I want the 101.
Yeah, 100%.
But don't do it.
I think anytime after you have the NFL draft, always combine the startup and rookie picks, or just have everything in the startup draft available. Before is the only time where I think it makes any sense to, if you're doing a startup, to do something like this, where you're saying like your draft kicker as picks. That's the order of the draft as you draft kicker picks. It's a pain in the butt to do, but it makes a heck of a lot more sense value-wise, because you end up putting some rookie value on top of those picks as they're drafted along. So keeps the value discrepancy a little further apart. Another startup question here. You think startup position can determine what stage you put your team at? Going young, win now, etc. I think personally, if I'm picking earlier in a draft, I think I'm more likely to try to trade down and basically punt for the next year, because I can trade down 2-3 times in the first round, gain a ton of draft capital for the next year, improve draft capital in this draft. Whereas if I'm in the back of the first round, I'm just more likely, I don't have as much value sway to go and move down the board and things. So I'm most likely going to just pick up the scraps of the value I can in the first round and go from there, maybe move a little bit here and there. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? This is kind of an interesting question, I think.
I don't necessarily think so, to be honest with you. It's all about how you draft. And like I said before, when you do a startup draft, don't be too firm on your strategy. You have to be flexible. So I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. I don't think it has to, but I think it can. Because like I said, for me, that's usually what I do. That if I can get trade offers to move down, otherwise I'll just stay where I am anyway. But I don't think it has to, but I think it can. I think depending on who you are as a drafter and who you are as a trader can determine, can play a role. I like to trade down anyway. Giving me the ability to trade down from the 101 or 102, I'm going to do it, and strengthen my draft capital pool and so on for the future. Let's see. I think we are pretty much caught up for the most part. Let me just real quick run through any closing thoughts or remarks, you guys, while I scroll through and try to not struggle with
college football starts today. It is week 0. Notre Dame is playing in Dublin, Ireland against Navy. USC is playing a tune-up game against San Jose State, I believe.
Go San Jose State.
That'll probably end like 60-14 or something like that. College football is back. Not back in full force yet, not till next week, but I'm just happy that meaningful football, as fun as preseason is back. I love it.
Yeah. And listen, Nate and I, we talk about college football. We will be talking about college football every single week on our Patreon. So patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Hit up the $5 or $10 tier. You get Rewind After Dark is what we call it, with some of the coolest intro music I've ever heard. But I'm being biased there because Nate made it. Yeah, we do. I do a small school big player. So I talk about guys like Carson Steele, which is a guy that you're going to have to know. Transferred to UCLA from Ball State. He's going to be relevant in a little bit.
I can't wait.
Bob does not like Carson
Steele.
It's okay. You don't have to like them. I won't be talking about him anymore because he's at a big school now. But maybe Nate will be covering him on Nate's debut player of the week at some point.
There you go. There you go. All right. So we do have a couple questions. Contenders, Superflex 12-team league. Quarterbacks are Howell, Rodgers, Pickett, and Purdy. Contending this year, would you trade Howell for a 25 first? Part of me wants to keep Howell since my quarterbacks are iffy, but the value, Nate. I 100% want to upgrade this quarterback room more than anything. I want to get some more certainty. I want to see if I can, this is a case where I'd be willing to bundle up 2 of these guys. Rodgers is probably the one I want to keep because I think he's probably, sadly, the most reliable out of this grouping. But I still don't, he's a high-end quarterback.
I don't hate the idea of moving Howell for a 25 first if then we can use that 25 first to package with one of these quarterbacks to upgrade the quarterback.
Yeah,
I'm fine
because
with
it's harder to trade 2 quarterbacks for 1 quarterback, but it's easier to trade 1 quarterback with a 25 first for a quarterback.
Everybody likes picks. They're universal currency. So 100%, they might not like the quarterback that you're dealing into if you package 2 of them, but I can promise they'll like the first round pick.
That gives you the value and helps your quarterbacks out. Solve both.
Yeah. Another trade. 12-team, 1 quarterback, start 8. Give London Etienne in a 24 first. Get Lamb.
I can't.
It feels like an overpay.
Just too much.
Yeah. Do 2 of those pieces. I think, or get a 24-second back, something. Because
I understand start 8, but still.
I want to get off of London more than anybody does, but you can't deny that London has market value, and the gap between him and Lamb is not this much. And that's just where I have to draw the line. So get a second back, do 2 of the options instead of 3. London and a 24 first, I think is pretty fair value for Lamb to begin with. So I wouldn't even say actually I need more than a second to get this done. Maybe 2 seconds over the next 2 years or something along those lines. But y'all think trading away Waddle, Kenneth Walker, and D-Hop to receive Lamb and Aaron Jones is fair? I would say nay, personally. Because again, we're talking about value gaps, and it's not that big between Waddle and Lamb.
Slight tier up there, and I don't think we're getting better at running back.
You're getting older.
You're getting older. You may production probably somewhat similar this year. Maybe Aaron Jones has a bit of a higher ceiling, but I mean AJ Dillon's still there. So I think it's a lateral move at running back at best. Definitely a tier down in the dynasty. So I'd rather just hold on than make this move.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Feelings on Godwin, McLaurin, and the Hollywood tier, those 25 to 27-year-olds. A lot of questions with these guys alone, and
they're
plenty
good
of guys
value for contenders. I think right now they're actually all of them are good value for contending teams.
Depending on what you need. Yeah,
if depending on what you need. Help.
Yeah, especially if Godwin, I'm not getting him to be a wide receiver 2 on my team. I'm getting him to be a depth flex piece. McLaurin, probably the same boat. Hollywood has upside to be a wide receiver 2, but just hasn't been able to put it together between injuries and everything else going on. So this grouping is tough. Definitely like the value for if you're a contending team, if you're looking to rebuild at this point. Not guys I really want to bet my horses on or bet on. You get it.
Deontay is also in this tier. So
yeah, I'd like Deontay Johnson more than any of those 3 for sure. To go get somebody who's a little bit more, in my opinion, better for a contender and can outlast a rebuild.
Yeah.
Anything else to add, gentlemen? Looks like we're all caught up on comments.
It's been lovely.
Appreciate everybody diving in and out like Nate's internet.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. I think we're going to be doing more of this throughout the season, right? Maybe about once a month ish.
That's the plan.
You may not always see these three faces on here, but probably at least one of us, I would say. So thank you again. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you want access to us almost 24/7, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. If not, we completely understand. Head on over, check us out on Spotify. If you just want the pods, the bonus pods, you could be a member here, Bob. You put the bonus pods up on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Spotify, you could sign up to be a subscriber on Spotify that you just get the bonus pods as well. I'm actually about to go upload one as soon as we're done with this. Zach's Attack.
Nice.
Zach Duarte. So anything else, gentlemen?
Good trade, Brandon.
Yeah, it's a good trade. I'll put it up real quick. This trade happened a month or two ago, but thoughts? I traded Madison and the 2023 201 for an early 24 first. We do a lottery draft, but none of those teams are playoff teams. Great move, great pivot. If you're not trying to compete in general, I think it's a good move. So that's all I got.
Deal. All right, Bob, you want to take us out of here?
I guess I can, but that's going to be it for us. We'll see all of you in the next one. But until then, y'all have a good one.